Hey guys, welcome into the Shadow Box. I am Carlise, your host. I am your shadow work guide and your grief and trauma coach. Today we have Kimberly Rich. Kimberly is visiting us today from Chicago. Kimberly has her doctoral degree in organizational leadership. She is also she's a death doula. So that's a different one. We always think about birth doulas, but Kimberly is a death doula. She is also an end of life coordinator, and she is a grief educator. She has this aspect of bringing an awareness and an understanding of bereavement into the workplace for those who are experiencing losses while
Mhm.
working. So, Kimberly, go ahead and give us some more information about yourself and welcome into the Shadow Box.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. You covered a lot of it really well. My career started. I have a almost 25-year career as an educator. I worked in elementary schools and junior high as a teacher and school principal. I went back to school to get a doctoral degree, and my focus ended up being on grief and bereavement. And we're going to get into all of that, I think, during the podcast. But I really, as I was researching and learning more about it, really fell in love with it. I ended up leaving my traditional career as an educator in May of 2024. I still consider myself an educator, but in a very different light, because now I try to educate a little bit more about end of life and grief and bereavement, which is certainly different than your typical third grade curriculum. So I still use those education skills, but to teach about something very different.
Awesome. So, Kimberly, I mean, once an educator, always an educator, right?
That's what it feels
And
like to me. Yeah.
right, because you just
Yeah.
evolve in whatever
Yep.
you're educating in.
Yes.
So I love that, and we'll talk about a lot of that, the shadow aspect of that too, because I think that you being an educator
Yeah.
probably started way back when.
Yeah, I love your website and I love the work that you do, and I'm kind of excited to it's fun for me to share my story with your community, but I also know that one of the things you're going to do is talk to me about that a little bit, and we haven't talked about that, and I'm really excited to kind of hear your analysis and what you
Awesome.
think. So, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, Kim, tell us what brought you into the world of grief.
You know, I would say I, we all miss signs, right? There are signs now that this is something that I've probably been interested in for a very, very, very long time. I didn't pick up on those signs though. And it's more in reflecting back that you're like, oh, I remember I had a good friend who died when I was in college, and he was towards the end of our senior year. And connected with his family very quickly when that happened, and worked with his family to have his degree awarded at graduation. And I actually got to speak at Arizona State and present his family with his degree at that time. And back when I was in second grade, I found an old piece of writing of mine where I don't know your age. You look younger
42.
than me. Okay, you're just a tiny bit younger than me. So you might remember this, you might not. But when I was in second grade, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded.
Mm.
And it was a huge deal. We all watched it at school live because there was a teacher on the space shuttle. So like my every school did it. My husband's school did it, and he was out in Boston. I was in the Chicago area. But I wrote a lot about that, like about the people who had been on the space shuttle. I found this old writing of mine where I'm sure it was for a school project, and I'm sure people probably thought I was crazy, but where I was just thinking about those families and the people who were there. And again, we had watched it at school, and it happened before our eyes. And as a very young person, that was so shocking, and so there's all those things, but I don't think I ever knew that it was possible to be to work in grief. I don't think that ever occurred to me as a career. And so I went to school, I became a teacher, and when my mom died in 2021, she died April 2nd of 2021. It was it was absolutely shocking to me. It was heart stopping. It was all of the most dramatic words you can come up with. And I had experienced loss in my life. I had never experienced a loss that made me feel as horrible as I felt
Yeah.
when she died. And in my work now, I describe that as the difference between grief and sorrow. And one of the examples I use is actually my mom's father. My grandfather died about 5 years before my mom, 3 to 5 years before. And I was sad when he died. When I got the phone call that he died, I cried. I flew in for his funeral. I lived out of state. I cried again at his funeral. I still think about him. I have pictures in my house, but I was sad and I experienced sorrow. I don't believe I experienced grief. He was 92. He had led a very full life. A lot of his friends and his siblings were gone. His wife was gone. I think I felt a certain peace that he was ready to go. When my mom died, how I was feeling was unrecognizable to me. And I believe that was my first grief experience. And I was I was shattered by it, not only by her death, but I've always been a relatively composed person and successful person and able to work no matter what was happening in my life. I've always been able to focus and write a list, stay organized. I have 2 master's degrees and a doctoral degree, and I've worked full time. And I like, this was the first time I couldn't carry on with my life. And that was really scary to me, is what's happening and why am I allowing this to happen? A big question I kept asking myself, or a statement maybe I kept saying, was my mom was destined to die before me. She died young. She was younger than I would have liked her to be, but I was always destined for this. If I live the life I want to live to see my children get married and have careers and, all of the things. I want to live to be 75, 80, 85 years old.
Yeah.
If I live that long, I'm going to outlive my mom. And if I was always destined for this, why does it hurt? Like the pain and the sadness was so overwhelming, and I felt like I should have been more prepared for this.
Yeah.
Um,
But how, that's one of those things of wanting to be in control,
yes,
and
yeah,
when death happens, because it can happen at the blink of an eye, right? Whether
yes,
you're sick
yes,
or whether you are well, whether if you're a top athlete, just on top of your game, just a clean bill of health, or if you've, or if you've gotten into an accident, like it
yeah,
happens so quick, and we realize how much in control that we are not.
right. Right. But the one thing I felt like, you're right, I'm not in control of this, which was really pissed me off, to be honest, and I think
I
it
mean,
does a
especially
lot of
because
people.
you're used to
But
going after and doing things and making things happen.
yeah. And so that I couldn't, and not only did the lack of control for my own self and my mom and our situation upset me, but I also really get a lot of joy from trying to help other people. And I wasn't able to help the other people in my life either. I wasn't able to help my dad. I wasn't able to help my children. I wasn't able to help my sisters. And I know now, after years of research and studying and work in this field, that I can't help them. But I didn't know that I couldn't. I just thought I was doing it wrong, right? When I would try to help and it wouldn't help them, I thought I was doing it wrong. I didn't understand that people have to move through their grief at whatever pace they're able to move through it. I thought it was my fault. And I hope crying's okay in your podcast. Like, my eyes are getting all teary remembering
You
it.
can
Just
cry,
how
you could curse, do whatever you want to do.
I will do both. But it's it was heartbreaking to not be able to fix me and not be able to to make it easier for all of them. And so the only thing I know how to do, the way I problem solve, is by learning.
Mm.
So I thought, I have to start learning about this. And I started, I mean, if you didn't know me, if you stopped by my house now and I invited you in, we have a hallway that's lined with built-in bookshelves that I love. I love reading. And it went from Nicholas Sparks novels and books about Nantucket to like now there's just books and books about grief and end of life and sorrow. And some are 100 years old. The books are not. The books are new from Amazon, but they were written 100 years ago. You know, A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis, and
I
some of
love
them,
C.S. Lewis.
right? I mean, and who knew? Like, I love C.S. Lewis because I read his books in elementary school, but I didn't read
Yeah.
these books. And, you know, and I found that and I read it. And then books that are so much more recent, like the Grieving Brain by Mary Frances O'Connor, where it's actual, the science of what happens to your brain when you're grieving. And so I read things that were old, and I read things that were new, and I read articles, and I listened to podcasts. And it's part of the reason I love being on podcasts, because they helped me so much. And maybe someone's going to listen to you and I talking, and it's going to help them. And all of this helped me to learn and to understand. And it didn't make me miss my mom less. I can cry at, you know, the mere mention of her name, especially when her name is mentioned, as, you know, when that comes as a surprise. And I will always miss her, but it makes the grief a little easier to weave into my life. And there's a certain part of me, I think, now that I understand it more, that in some ways is proud of my grief. You know, I think that it's kind of a badge of honor that I've had a relationship that has meant so much to me. And so after I went through this process and I did earn my doctoral degree, one, I fell in love with what I was doing, but two, I wanted to try to help other people have a better experience than I had with their grief. I can't erase their grief, but I wanted to work in a field where I would be able to help them understand it and help them process it and help them to know that they're okay and that they're going to be okay. And so I needed to do this work. So that's maybe a longer answer than you bargained for, but
No,
that's
but that's a
it.
perfect answer. And in my mind, as you were talking, I that shadow aspect came back up to me as well, because when you were a child and you were a teenager and having those loss, and you were already functioning in your purpose. And
Yeah,
so when mom passed away and you were like, well, this hurt me so deeply. I know the difference between sorrow and I know the difference between grief. That grief when mom passed away that was your identity. And when you are coming into yourself, into your authentic self, into your purpose, of course you were shattered into that opening of who you truly are and what you're supposed to be
yeah,
doing. And
yeah.
what you're supposed to be doing, you've been doing for a long time. You've been coordinating. Who would have thought to coordinate the college, the guy in
The
college
degree
that
for
passed
James.
away?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, who would have thought to coordinate
yeah.
that so that you could put things in place to receive his diploma for him? And it's when we think back, we understand that there are steps that are taken that gets us to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Those
that's, I think,
yeah.
what, you know, like I got to a point where it was just so clear that this is what I'm supposed to do now. And once you accept that, right? And you accept that this is something you're kind of good at and something that not everyone's comfortable doing, so there's a need for it. And you get to that point and then you start looking backwards and you
Yeah.
go, "Oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh, and so you do have those moments and that where you start to remember and see other places where you have connected with
Yeah.
grief and sorrow and end of life. And, those start to build up a picture of a person who was probably supposed to be in this field. It just took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah. And understanding that aspect too of you, like, I don't know how to do this.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
did know how to do
Yes.
it, but you had to come into yourself through your own grief, through your own
Yeah.
experience, for you to pull out the tools that you had to learn to equip yourself with so that you can equip other people with them, right? And
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
it's like it's your purpose is already in you. But like I
Mm.
tell people all the time, grief, the loss will expose you and will open you up to who you truly are and what you're supposed to, that who, what, when, where thing,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
that all starts to make sense
Yeah.
once you
Right.
experience the hardship of grief. But it's such a, it's grief, loss, I'll put it that way. Loss is um such an educational tool, and grief teaches you how to process, and it teaches you how to become. And that is one of the things that people
Yeah.
miss, you
Yeah.
know, in this whole grieving world.
I think so too. And I think because of the weakness that grief brings on, and I don't mean that as in like a strength and a weakness, but I mean it literally in the physical body sense that your body is weak, your mind is weak, right? You're not eating the way a healthy person would eat. You're not exercising the way a healthy person or sleeping the way a healthy person would sleep. And so your body really is in a weakened state. And I think it's in that weakened state when you can't be as protective of your image and you aren't really deciding this is who I want to be today or this is what I want to look like. You don't have the energy for any of that, right? So in that state of physical and mental weakness, you can't help but be anything other than you, right? There's nothing else there. You're just you. And if you pay attention to who you are when you don't have the energy to protect that image, I think you can learn a lot about yourself and good things and bad things, right? I learned things about myself that I'm not proud of, that I don't talk about often, but I also learned things about myself that I am proud of. And I go to therapy. I've gone to therapy since my mom died, and I think everyone in the world should. But I've learned to accept those parts of me that I'm
Yeah,
not as proud of, and to celebrate the parts of me that I am proud of, and all of them together. Again, they make up me,
yeah.
and you know, and
That's who you
hopefully
are,
there's yeah,
and that's a part of that shadow aspect too, because your shadow is your subconscious coming to the conscious. Your shadow
okay,
are those things that
yeah,
have been buried and kind of suppressed, and says that, this is not a societal norm, or this is not a cultural norm, or this is not a family norm, or things that are said to be, that could embarrass the family, or tarnish the name, or things of that
right,
nature, or even character. When we think about that, those are the
right,
things that we push to the side and hide. But when grief
absolutely,
comes about, when your loss comes about, that's again that exposure. And here you go, having to face yourself to say, how did I learn these things? Where did this conditioning come from? Is it going to really serve me? And if it's serving me, how do I make it serve me for my better?
yeah.
And
That's exactly what happened to
yeah,
me. And to forgive yourself for some of that. Like we're not meant to be perfect as humans, right? And so it's also okay to say, I made a mistake. That's okay. I don't need to repent for that for the rest of my life. That
right.
isn't that nobody wants that, or if they do, that's not fair of them. But so you go through the everything you just said. You go through that whole entire process and you celebrate the parts you want to celebrate and you forgive yourself for the parts you want to forgive and you embrace the parts that maybe aren't exactly what you want them to be, but they are. And it's a little bit like, maybe, loving the way your arms look, but not the way your legs look. At some point, you just need to accept your legs for what they are and be proud of them, and,
Because
show
after all, you
them to
can
the
walk,
world.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Show them to the world. So I think that's part of what I'm even still learning and working on in therapy, is that,
Yeah.
you know, is loving all the parts and all the bits and
Yeah.
pieces.
And
Yeah.
the shattering is like
Yeah.
the best part when you get to into knowing yourself, because you get to put those pieces. I mean, you're so broken where you have to again face yourself, but you get to put those pieces back together, the pieces that matter, the pieces
Yes.
that are truly
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
you
There were
know?
also some things I got to let go of, that it was great to have an excuse to let go of those things too, right? There were some things that you were like, well, this really shitty thing happened, but I would not be doing this job without it. And I love that I'm doing the job that I'm doing. And I am, my heart is full because of the people I get to help. And I was with two different clients yesterday, and I had an hour drive home from one of my clients' homes, and the whole time I was singing out loud. And it's weird, right? Because it's hard work, and it's work that a lot of people are like, oh, I couldn't do what you do, I couldn't do what you do. But it makes me so happy to be making this experience a little bit better for other people. And none of this would be happening had I not gone through the loss of my mom. Now, I would give anything to have her back, right? Like, if there were four choices in front of me, I'm picking the one that brings her back, and I'm not doing this work. But if I had to lose her, to me, this is kind of a cool thing that came out of it. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to be doing it. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about mom and dad.
Sure. My parents were married for over 40 years. Had three daughters. I'm the oldest. I have two sisters who are younger than me. Obviously, that was kind of repetitive, but I'm the oldest of three daughters, no brothers. We really, for most of our lives, we grew up in the same town. When I was, in second grade, we moved to the town that I live in now and that I was raised in. My mom worked as a teacher in that same town. Um, so I grew up with the same people. I had just a very consistent, stable upbringing. I had a very, very blessed childhood. I really did. There were definitely moments of hardship, but that was just, those were things that the average human experiences, right? I was very privileged, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I had a very stable family. I had parents who loved me and cared for me. Um, I had sisters who I really adored and still adore, and got along with rather well growing up. Again, did I ever get frustrated with my parents about curfew? Absolutely, right? Like, I have, yelled at them before because I thought they were ridiculous. And did I ever fight with my sisters about clothing? I did, right? Or about who was having friends over on Friday night. And, it wasn't perfection, but I think it was very, very normal, and it was really good. When I, as an adult, and especially now in the work that I'm doing, and you hear other people's stories, I did not have any hardships or any big stories to tell. And I had a wonderful relationship with my mom. I still am very close to my dad and my sisters, and I um, really enjoy being invited into their lives and spending time with them and with their children. And I beam when they want to be a part of mine. It really makes me happy when they want to be involved in my life. And we've always been close. We have always spent Christmases together. We spend birthdays together. My sisters and I, our birthdays are all in July, July 6, 10, and 11. So we're all within a week in July. My mom's birthday is also in July. My dad kind of got left out because he was in May, but we celebrated his birthday, but it wasn't quite the, spectacle that
Yeah.
July was. But, anything, I think that like if you were to write a story and the main character lived again just like a privileged, happy, easy life, that was mine. And grew up in a great town. I always felt safe. I always felt cared for. I always had what I needed. I didn't always have what I wanted, but I always had what I needed, which, is ideal. As an adult, my parents were always involved in our lives. The lives of our children and us have always been easy to talk to, about the hard things and the easy things. um, Incredible sources of wisdom and advice, as you're raising your own kids and you have babies, and those babies become teenagers, and those teenagers start saying hurtful things to you. And, they were always great at kindly reminding me that I had said hurtful things too, and that's a part of growing up. And, and just generous, kind, wise, easy to be with. My mom was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2003. My oldest son was born in February. His birthday is actually coming up, February 27th.
Wow.
And shortly after he was born, my mom started to not feel well. At first, they thought it was, a cough or pneumonia. I don't remember exactly. I know that at first it was try antibiotics, try steroids, and it got to the point where they started doing additional testing, and she had cancer. She had lymphoma. It was a really tough fight for her. It was interesting. The same day my parents shared with us that my mom had been diagnosed with lymphoma, my husband's mother and father shared with us that my mother-in-law had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was the craziest day. And we had this newborn, and we thought we were bringing, this is very selfish but true, we thought we were bringing this child into the world where we were going to have this whole community to help us raise him and celebrate him, right? And all the grandmas, like we felt like we're going to be pushing grandmas away because they were all going to want to be
Yeah.
there. And it was scary that they were sick. The thought of them not surviving was it was unthinkable. And also at the same time, it really changed the landscape for us, and what it was going to look like to be raising our children. And so, my mom really struggled. The chemotherapy that she had was very aggressive. It caused neuropathies, which is some, nerve damage. She was very sick, but she did go into remission, which was a huge gift. And it was so inspiring to see her. I remember thinking at one point, I don't know that I would keep doing it, right? Especially the vomiting. I hate vomiting.
Yeah.
And seeing her do that, and then watching her go back for chemo weeks later, knowing what it was going to do to her again. I remember thinking, I don't know that I could keep going back, but she did. And so she went into remission. She was in remission for a little over a year and then had a reoccurrence. And so she, fought again and had a bone marrow transplant as a part of her, process, her cure.
Yeah.
Um, and then she went into remission again and was healthy for a very long time, which was, again, just a huge, huge gift. Um, and then in late 2020, mid 2020, I guess, she started to struggle with breathing and having some fits of coughing. And I'm going to shorten the story for you, but there was lung damage that was happening and it was related to the treatment she had had when she had had cancer. 16 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really hard on your body. The wear and tear is very, very difficult, or at least that's they believe why she was having it. She was diagnosed with something called interstitial lung disease, and
Mm.
they, related that back to the treatment she had gone through. And so she was eventually put on a list to receive a lung transplant. They kind of went back and forth. It was a double lung transplant. Then they said maybe only one. Then her health deteriorated and they were thinking two again, but she never got to that lung transplant.
And how old was she at that time?
67. So
Okay.
she was 67. And so she was waiting for that transplant when her lungs just really, really started to struggle. And she was hospitalized on March 3rd. Her body really started to go downhill pretty quickly. It wasn't overnight. She died on April 2nd, but I feel like at the beginning of this, I might have said April 1st, but it was April 2nd. And so she just, within the course of that 1 month, eventually she was intubated. She was on high flow oxygen. Her kidneys started to fail. Like, I think her body was just tired. Her
Yeah.
heart started to struggle. And she did die while waiting for that transplant. And one of the questions you get a lot when you say, my mom died, even when it first happened, right? And you're informing people that she had died, people would ask, did you expect that?
Yeah.
People always want to know that, right? Was this unexpected or expected? And
Yeah.
you mentioned that towards the beginning, is it a car accident or did they have MS? And I used to say to people that it was unexpected because it very much was for me
Yeah.
unexpected. But then you tell people the story of what we went through in that month, and that she, even months earlier had been going through the process of getting on the lung transplant list. And I realized she was probably sicker than I was willing to admit she was. But she had also been, she had overcome, such incredible health issues in the past that I just think that we all thought that she was invincible, and it wasn't until she wasn't invincible anymore that, that I was able to admit that how sick she was. So to me, her death was a complete shock and a surprise, although other people may have felt that there were signs that could be coming. I didn't see those. I believed that she would. I thought she was a warrior. She is a warrior. That's not fair. It's not fair to say
Yeah. Definitely.
it in that
Definitely.
way. She is a warrior. But we're not in control,
Yeah.
right? So warrior or
And we
not.
put those rose-colored glasses on,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we don't want to see what is in front of us, because of what's being displayed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because like we say, she is a warrior, and but we know cognitively, we know that there's a decline
Yeah.
happening. We know that there's a sickness there. But
Yeah.
when they're displaying the strength and the bandwidth to just keep going,
Yep.
and all of that, it's just like, okay, maybe this isn't real,
Right.
right?
Even when she was, intubated, I didn't think I should start saying goodbye, right? I just thought this sucks. And this is harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought she was just going to wait at home for the transplant, right? I had this whole picture in my head of what that was going to look like. And she was going to rest comfortably at home and eventually would get the transplant. But it didn't, it didn't occur to me that we would be saying goodbye. And that's part of even what I teach other people now is that the very best case scenario is that everything we're doing is a total waste of time,
Mhm.
right? Like when you're spending time with me and we're doing work and we're preparing to say goodbye, or we are engaging in activities that are saying goodbye, and you do survive whatever this is that you're going through, and it depends upon my client, right? But if you do survive, the worst thing is that you've told people that you love them, right? The worst
Right.
thing is that you have shared the stories you want to share. The worst thing is that you've prepared for something that didn't happen yet. I mean, it's going to happen. We're all terminal, right? All we're all going to go at some point, but um I think there's nothing wrong with having an awareness that our life is going to end, preparing
Yeah.
for the fact that our life is going to end, and to do a better job at saying, I love you. You mean a lot to me. I appreciate the things you've done for me. Just I think communication is really important because we don't know when that communication is going to stop. And I don't want to miss out on an opportunity again.
Yeah, that acknowledgement and the validation,
Yeah.
because there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who pass away who leave loved ones behind. And that is something that the loved ones that are left behind are grasping for. They're still
Yeah.
grasping for it, which makes it even harder for them to go through a form of the healing process through their
Yeah.
grief,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit of a crazy person now, like I say I love you to people who I really do genuinely love. And sometimes it catches people off guard, right? Because that's not a normal thing to just say to, your cousin when you hang up the phone, or to your friend. But um, once you've had an experience where that opportunity is taken away from you, and my mom certainly knew that I loved her, but there are conversations I wish I would have had with her, right? And I didn't, and I don't want to leave those anymore. And so I tell my kids, I sometimes on a Thursday I just leave a note for my kids that says I love you and have a
Yeah,
good day, and because I don't want them to ever wonder. And sometimes I send a text message to people and just say I
yeah,
love you, and I someday I'm going to go, and I don't want anyone to wonder at
right.
all how I felt about them. I want that to be very clear. So that's probably a result, right, of my own trauma, but that's a
Yeah.
good thing that came out of it
But
is
that's one of those things I was going to ask you too. I have like two or three things that came up in my mind. But the first one, what I really want to ask you, because, time is coming up, right? So
yeah,
mom was in the hospital March 3rd.
yeah.
And how are you doing during this time where time is approaching of that? I hate the word anniversary, but of that coming of time.
Um it is, so we're at 4 years now. And every year I think it's going to get easier, and it doesn't. It's an incredibly difficult time for me every year. Um, and it's weird because I don't intentionally think about it, right? There are some things that I intentionally think about and you enter into, but it is hardwired into my brain, and it's connected to other life events that still happen. And for example, my son's birthday being February 27th was days before she went into the hospital on March 3rd. And on that birthday, he was turning 18. Um, and my mom couldn't, this was during COVID, she couldn't be around other people because we knew she was waiting for the lung transplant, and that getting sick would be, very harmful for her. But my son in Illinois, you can't smoke legally until you're 18.
Mhm.
And so my son on his birthday really wanted to smoke a cigar with his grandpa and his dad. We are not huge smokers, but my dad will have a cigar in the summertime, out by the fire. And it was a freakishly warm day for February in Chicago. So he went over, sat on my dad's patio. We went with my husband, and they smoked a cigar together. I did not go. I stayed home. I made his birthday cake. For me, it was like, again, I wasn't thinking about, could this be the last time I see my mom at her house, or, see my dad? I was like, oh, cool. He's going to go smoke a cigar. I have 4 kids. I have a full-time job, right? I was like, I'm going to wrap some presents. I'm going to make a cake. Like, I'm going to get all my
Yeah.
stuff
Get
done
the
that I
things
have not
done.
been doing, right? So very practical instead of making, a decision that might be more personal or emotional. It was like, sweet, I'm going to have an hour and a half, go smoke your cigar. So they went, and there's a picture that I have that is, it's not a good photograph. There's, it's very low quality, but my mom took it from her window in her family room. And so like she like held her phone up to her window and took a picture of the three, my son, my husband, and my dad sitting outside smoking a cigar. And um she didn't go near them, but I know, from the story that she did go out on the deck and, say happy birthday and hi, how are you? And, and she took that picture and got to see them. And so his birthday will come, and that's the last time anyone in my family, the Rich family, saw her out of the hospital. That's the last time my husband and my son saw her, because we weren't visiting often because of COVID. And I didn't go. And I still cry about that. And I saw her in the hospital, and had conversations with her and played games with her and spent time with her prior to her being intubated and sedated. But on his birthday, I'm doing it now just talking to you, but I will cry every year on his birthday, thinking about that. And sometimes I wonder if I'll do that for the rest of my life, which is okay. I don't cry for 6 hours, right? But a little bit like I am right now. You get a little teary eyed, and think about that picture and think about them outside. And then you move on with your day. And it doesn't bother me that grief sprinkles itself in, but I'll think about it, and as we move through March and really through even mid-April, remembering, I'm sorry, remembering her wake and her funeral and, all the things afterwards. There's going to be a lot of moments like that in the next 6 weeks. And that might forever be a part of my life, and that's okay. But I do every year, I kind of wonder, like, I wonder if this will be the year it's different, right? It's been 2 years now or 3 years now, but it still tugs at me. So,
And each year is different. I mean,
yeah,
there are some years where, it could be months prior
that's
to
very
things
true.
starting to happen.
Yes.
And, and you'll start to react to it. You'll start to have physical reactions to it.
Yep.
There could be times where it's that day of, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, this
Yeah,
is that day." So it's not cookie cutter. It's just one of those. You could be driving down a highway, and all of a
you're
sudden
absolutely right.
you got to pull over because you
Even
can't keep it
things,
together.
sometimes sometimes I don't even recognize what's happening until like 6 hours later, right? There will be times where you'll just I'll start crying, or I'll feel overwhelmed or short of breath, and it'll be hours later that I'll be like, oh, I know why that happened, right? It was that song came on the radio and I forgot that it reminds me of her, or this thing happened, or this thing didn't happen, or, like sometimes you don't even know in the moment
Yeah.
why it's happening, right? But
Yeah.
you
And
put it
that,
together later.
not always, not for one, not all shadows are bad, right? It just depends
Good.
on how we've been conditioned to think about them. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And
I
also
agree with
not,
that.
yeah, and it's also not all shadows are only experienced or organized as a child. As we grow through our adulthood, teenage adulthood, parenthood, things of that nature, and we experience different things, our shadow is still being built. And so when you experience a loss
Yeah.
and you have the grief,
Hmm.
now this is a part of your shadow. And so you're asking yourself, am I always going to feel like this? Am I
Right.
always going to think of this particular thing in this way? So now that we know that this has become a part of your shadow, you're grieving, your mom has become a part of your shadow, certain things that you didn't used to do, now that you do, that you've lost her, how do you now incorporate that and make it okay with you and make peace with this part of your shadow?
Um, I think I'm just, again, I think the learning has helped me a lot,
Mhm.
a lot. And learning that, again, when you read C.S. Lewis, and the a grief observed is his journals after his wife died, and the journals he wrote about his grief, and then you read stories of like Amanda Klutz, who lost her husband during COVID. And so you've got these two people telling stories decades apart.
Yeah.
And there's so many similarities. And in that deep research that I did, that you listen to Anderson Cooper's podcast and you listen to, I mean, there's so many, right? But you listen to all these different people, people with affluence, people who have struggled, people who, grieved 100 years ago, people who grieved 5 years ago, and you see the commonalities in it. It's so forgiving because you realize that what you're going through is what humans have experienced for probably all
Yeah.
of time, right? And so for me, I think it's really allowed me to be comfortable with who I am, and I don't feel the need most of the time to apologize for it anymore,
Yeah.
right? It's here and there I am, and that's probably a different podcast episode when you still, but usually those moments of discomfort are not me, but it is because of the people I'm around, right? And so when it comes to me, I think I'm very comfortable with this being a part of my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I want it to go away
Yeah.
completely, because it is what still connects me to my mom. It is what still helps me to build that relationship with her, right? Because it's when I feel that tug that it's Casey's birthday and I stayed home and made the cake and I could have waved at her from the patio. When I feel that tug, at the same time I'm thinking of my mom, and I stop, right? And those are the moments when I say, hi, and I say, can you believe, like, he's going to be 22. He's going to be 22. And I say these things out loud in my kitchen, and I'm usually home alone, right? But I talk to her, and I was reminded of her because of the grief. And I tell her that he's 22, and I tell her that he's a pilot now. And I remind her that I was engaged when I was 22, right? And this just happened the other day. And then I laughed out loud, like I just giggled with you. And the thought of him coming home and telling me he's engaged feels like it would be a joke, right? And then I'm like, how, and my marriage has been blessed and happy and successful. But then I say out loud, how did you let me get engaged when I was 22? And thank God that worked out. But like, you were
Yeah.
crazy. You should have told me, no, you're a baby, because he's a baby. And, so because I felt that pull of grief, I remain in relationship with her, and I'm reminded to talk to her and share these thoughts with her, right?
Yeah.
What is going through my brain. And I like that I share it with her. And I don't necessarily feel a response from her,
Mhm.
but I do feel like I'm in relationship with her. And that is a gift. So feeling those moments of grief and feeling those moments of sorrow, I'm really pretty comfortable with it at this
Yeah.
point. I tell my kids about it, right? If my kids walk in and I'm a little teary about something, I'll be like, oh, I just thought about grandma for this reason. And I like building that comfort with them. My husband is totally like not surprised by any of it at this point, because I'm
Yeah.
open with him about it. And I'm open with my clients about it. Sometimes my clients tell me things that bring me to tears or choke me up, and I tell them my stories, and I hope that in modeling my comfort with that, I'm maybe encouraging other people to be more comfortable with their grief.
Yeah.
And eventually, if that spreads enough, maybe we can change the culture around grief a little bit.
Definitely. Definitely. And
Yeah,
it takes people like you and I to have those honest
I
conversations
agree.
and come on platforms and do that.
Yeah,
But what I really want to bring into like the focus for you is how you really brought into this whole how you really did shadow work in a small amount of time.
I want you to tell me.
Because you just when I asked you, this formed a part of your shadow, and you acknowledge how you feel. You are aware of it and you accept it. And now you've learned how to incorporate it.
Hmm.
So when you're like, I feel these things, and when I had the chance to wave to her from the window, when I had the chance to do all of these things,
Yeah,
I didn't, but I stopped myself and I learned how to incorporate her in the moment. And when you learn how to incorporate her in the moment, you can live with her. You
yeah,
can live with it. And that's
yeah.
how you allow the shadow, which would have been, I didn't do this, I wasn't there, I couldn't have done, that's the shadow.
Right, right.
And
Yes,
once you did it the other way and you flipped it upside down and you incorporated it, now it's no longer chasing you down. You
you're
can cry
absolutely
happy
right.
tears, and you're crying happy tears because you're acknowledging her and because you're
Hmm.
bringing her into the fold, not because you feel like you've left her out or that you missed
Absolutely.
a choice or a chance.
And that's the gift that honest I credit over and over again to a great insurance plan and a wonderful therapist because,
Yeah,
she is the one who has taught me that
yeah,
um and how to do that and how to accept it. And it has helped me. It's even noticeable in, when my mom first died, I was clinging to her things, like just things,
yeah,
right? To a chair, to a table, to a sweatshirt, and I still have a lot of her things around me, and I'm lucky for that. But I'm much less attached to the things now. And some I have moved out. Some I have said, this isn't a thing I'm even enjoying. And I don't need it anymore
yeah,
because at the beginning, the way I felt close to her was to clutch to those things. And now, again, because I am kind of proud of the work that I've done in therapy. And because I've done that work, I've gotten to a place where I can be in a relationship where I don't need material things to help tie me back to her. And I love that too.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And you said the key word there, relationship. You
Yeah.
are learning how to build a relationship with her in the now and not what
Yeah.
you had with her previously. That's
Absolutely.
that's the that's the key to
Yeah.
that's the key to it.
And I'm still working on it. It is not
Of course.
perfection, but still,
It never
I'm
will be.
trying.
It never
Yeah.
will be, because
Yeah.
just imagine the things that you're going to continue to grow older and go through. That's
Oh,
always going to
yes.
be another level that you're going to be like, ah, I wish
Yes.
my mom was here. If she was here, she
Forever.
would have done that. And you just continue to learn how to build upon your relationship with her in the
Yeah.
now. So that is a lot of experience that brought you into your purpose. And it kind of catapulted you into, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I to do with these feelings? How am I supposed to educate others now that I've started to educate
Hmm.
myself?
Yes.
Now you kind of ventured out, and now you are a birth doula. So tell us how you got into, what does a birth doula, I'm not a birth doula, a
I'm
death doula.
not. I'm terrified of being a birth doula. So do not
Yeah.
call me if you're birthing. That is not for me.
You
I
call
love the
me, I'm a
babies.
birth doula.
Are you really? We'll have to
Yeah.
talk about that sometime. I will hold all the babies. I will hold all of them. I do not want to help bring them in. I am not qualified for that.
But a
But
death doula.
a
A
death
death
doula.
doula
So
is,
a
yeah.
death doula does a whole span of things, and I get a lot, right? It's very unfamiliar for people, and it's a relatively new profession. Now, I believe people have been doing it for hundreds of years, but friends were doing it, family members were doing it. There wasn't a name for it, right? And more recently, we have named it, and I get a certificate. I have a certificate in it, so you can be professionally trained, and you can verify that you are someone who knows how to do it and understand. And so the first misconception that happens a lot is people believing it's the same as hospice care or palliative care. And even those two things are different from each other, but it's not. So it's, hospice care, there is a compassionate care piece to hospice care, but hospice is going to take care of a lot of medical needs, right? They're going to help you to adjust pain medications. They are going to make sure if you're someone who is bound to a bed that you are comfortable, that you don't have sores, that, they're going to come in and kind of keep an eye on you, keep an eye on blood pressure, keep an eye on signs that, maybe your kidneys are starting to shut down, things like that.
Mhm.
I don't do any of that. I am a doctor, but I'm a doctor, not medical related. So, as a death doula, you do things like, one, prepare people for end of life. So, you have a terminal illness, and let's start talking about what this is going to look like, right? A lot of people who know they have a terminal illness will, not all, but many, will be nonverbal prior to dying. And they might be nonverbal for 3 hours, which I think is such a gift and a blessing. But they might be nonverbal for a week or two. So if you're nonverbal, you're not talking, you're asleep most of the time, but you're still alive. Usually you can still hear and you can still smell.
Okay.
So a big thing I'll do first with my clients is talk a little bit about what smells they like, right? If you are in a hospital or a hospice care center, you can put oils on cheeks or above your lips so you can be smelling a smell that you like. If you're at home, that could be candles, it could be diffusers, whether you're at home or in a hospital where, oil is diffusing into the air. But what is a scent you've always loved and that would make you feel comfortable at end of life? Some people don't know. And I actually have like a little bag of oils. And usually if they say, I don't, I don't know what and I take these out and they start to smell them, there's always one where they'll go, oh, I like that, and you're like, all right, that's your scent, right? Me, I know I love the scent of like apple. I love apple scent. I love evergreen, like a Christmas candle is just the best. And so some people know and can identify that. Other people don't know. But if they start to smell things, they'll be, you've got that, oh, that one's gross. And, oh, that one's wonderful. And you can drill that down. And then the same for hearing. What do you want to hear? And for some people it's gospel music. For some people it's a favorite TV show or movie. I just recently had someone tell me that Elf the movie is like their comfort movie, and they just want Elf played on repeat, like whether it's April or December. And I was like, I think that's great, right? That's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it should be something and you're comfortable with. With other people, we put together playlists. So we'll put together a playlist of music, and then, someone in their family knows it exists. And so when Kim is nonverbal, she wants you to play this playlist. These are the songs she wants to hear. I have had people who just want a book read aloud to them, right? Maybe a book they've already read. This is my favorite book. Some people say, pick a book. I don't care. I just want to hear Kim's voice. I don't care what she's saying to me. It can be hard for people to just talk to you when you're nonverbal. You're
Right.
not talking back. They don't know what to say. So to have something to read can be really helpful. Some people want the Bible read to them, and
Mhm.
some have a bookmark in the Bible where they want you to start. Other people just say, pick a story, right? And start reading and keep reading. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What do you want the room to feel like, right? Who do you want in the room? And a death doula can end up being, luckily, I have not had any difficult situations with this, but I do know of a couple people in the field who have, where you end up being a little bit of a bouncer, right? Where you have to say to people, she wanted 4 people in the room and you're
Yeah.
not one. And then my job, and I have had to say that, but people have accepted it. And then my job is to comfort them, right? Is to talk to them and say, why do you want to be in the room? What didn't you get to say that you want to say? What didn't you get to do that you want to do? And so, um, some of it is who do you want in the room with you? Some people want everyone. They want the room full, all the bodies to be there with them. Some people don't. They want one person with them or three people with them. So, one of the things that I think is most important in the role of death doula is giving power back to the person who's dying, right? They've lost all of their power, which is humans, that is incredibly hard. It's hard when you're 85 and someone takes your car keys away. But imagine if someone's taken away the gift of life, if someone's taken away the ability to use your legs, the ability to swallow, the ability to feel comfort, you've lost all your power. And then I'm giving you some opportunities to regain it, right? Where I say you're still in control of what you hear, of what you smell, of who surrounds you, of what clothes you're wearing, right? You're in control. Sometimes we work to plan their funeral. I think it is beautiful if you can plan your own funeral. I think it's beautiful. I think, one, it helps your surviving loved ones to not argue about what you would have wanted, not
Yeah.
knowing what you would have wanted. And there is some of that. A lot of my clients who are younger, 30 to 50s, have moved away from faith, and they don't really want a faith based service when they die, but their parents who may still be alive do, you
Yeah.
know? And so, again, it's the power in saying, this is what I want, and being able to say to the parents, she wrote down what she wanted, right? This is what she wants. Instead of having your sister, who's your best friend, fight with your mom about whether or not you wanted a Catholic funeral,
Yeah.
you've now written it down, and there's no denying that that's what you've asked for. Do
And
you,
how honorable is that though? Like it's honorable because they're trusting you. They
yeah,
trust you when I can't talk. I know that I have an advocate for me
yeah.
that's going to produce all of my desires. That's an honorable thing for a person who's knows they're close to giving their last breath to give to another person.
It absolutely is. And it is, I think that's why, like I said, when I leave, I just feel so good, right? That they trust me to tell me that I can do this for them. These
Yeah.
aren't hard things to do,
Yeah.
right? They're really not. To make
Yeah.
sure that I have this oil and a diffuser ready for you. I mean, Amazon probably wonders, like, I'll even order stuff for people. I'm sure if someone looks at that, they're like, this woman goes through diffusers like it's nobody's business. Like, what is she putting in there? But they're not all for me. But these are such easy things to do, but they bring great comfort and joy. And they're such a gift to the people. I think it also helps the people survive who do survive you in their grief. Like, I have a client right now who is probably within months, she will probably pass away.
Mhm.
She is doing everything. We have written her obituary for the most part. Her family's going to need to add in what day she dies, but
Yeah.
we have written her obituary. We have planned her funeral. We have a playlist put together for her. She has decided what she wants done with her remains. Everything. She has picked out pictures. We have made the booklet for her funeral. We have done everything. At this point, we spend time together just to talk to each other because we've done it all.
Yeah.
And here's the enormous gift in that. One is that she will have peace knowing that her celebration is going to be, I mean, she's picked the food for her luncheon and it's food she loves. And she's going to know that, we put so much time and attention into planning a wedding, and your funeral is the last chapter of your life. It's where we tell we wrap up the whole story, right?
Yeah.
And she has made sure that she is reflected in every single part of that celebration. And that's one benefit. And then the other one is that when she does die, her family is all going to get to sit around, look at pictures, and tell stories.
Mm.
And they get to start their grief right away. I regularly tell the story about how I don't believe I started grieving until weeks after my mother's death because
Yeah.
I didn't have time. And to open yourself to grief takes time. And I didn't have it because my mom died within 18 hours we were at the funeral home, and then you're buying things for the wake, and then you're writing the obituary, and then you're like sending a picture here, and who's going to pick out the flowers, and
Yeah.
and we had a great group of people to work on it together. And that was wonderful, but everybody was working.
Yeah.
We weren't standing around with a glass of wine and open photo albums
Yeah.
and telling stories and grieving. We were all working.
Yeah.
And I don't want my clients' families to have to work. I want them to get to grieve and to
Yeah.
tell stories and to focus on memories, not a task list. And so I think that's the gift for the survivors, is that
Yeah.
part.
That's beautiful. I love how you said just this is your last party, so to speak. This is your
It
last
is.
celebration, and to bring it all together. That's I love that analogy that you utilized. So now that okay, so you are a birth doula, but
Yeah.
you also have this doctorate in the organizational
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
And your journey again step by step, here we are into your calling some more here, so your journey leads you into the corporate world. It
Yeah.
leads you into businesses where you're actually able to go into these offices, HR
Yep.
offices, and talk to them about how they're handling their employees who are grieving. Talk to us about that.
Sure. I kind of tripped into that a little bit, but love it. So I had started my degree work before my mom died. And I was studying something completely different for my research. And really long story short, I didn't care about that anymore after she died. Like at all. I still don't. And I was like, I can't. Doctoral research is so intense and so laborious that I was like, I cannot spend 2 years researching and writing about something that I don't care about. But my degree was in organizational leadership. So, as I told you, I started learning about grief and mourning and bereavement and end of life. And I couldn't figure out how to marry that with this doctoral program because your research had to be connected to organizations. And it was actually one of my professors who said, you know, there's ways, right? Let's talk through this. And we had a long phone call, and I came to the realization that I would be excited to research how how organizations support their employees when they return to work while grieving. And here is part of why is my mom died. I was a teacher at the time. She died on the Friday of spring break. So we were supposed to go back to school on Monday, 3 days after she died. And the night she died, it was very, very late that night. I sent an email to my boss. And typically when you are a teacher, you put in for your own substitute. There's a program we use, right? And you attach substitute plans. Here's what you're going to teach, everything else. We're on spring break, and it wasn't even I wasn't thinking like, I don't care about my job. I'm not doing sub plans. If they fire me, they fire. None of that happened. All I had space for was I have to tell my boss I'm not coming to work on Monday. That was all I had the capacity to do. So I did. I sent him an email and I just said, I'm going to take 2 weeks off of work. And I did nothing else. I did not write sub plans. I did nothing. And I had a great boss who to this day has never complained about that. We've never spoken about it, right? He was just,
Yeah.
okay. But about a week afterwards, it was the Thursday after that. So 6 days later, I sent a follow-up email. Now the funeral has been done. The wake is done. I send a follow-up email and I say to HR and to my boss and say, I'm still off next week. So I've taken 10 days off, basically 2 weeks, 10 days. I said, I don't know how much bereavement time we get. I don't know how all this works, right? But I just wanted to follow up with everybody. And I received an email back from Human Resources that just one sentence, we're sorry for your loss. This is the same. I was really offended by it because it's the same school district my mom devoted her entire career to.
Yes.
So these are people this person is someone who knew about her, knew of her. Like I was really irritated that like you know her. And of course when it's someone you love, right? Like you
Yeah.
know her value, you know how fantastic she was. And
Right. And you're
all
like,
you
you're
had to do
disrespecting my
was spit
mom.
out this stupid sentence, right?
Yeah.
And I was probably over emotional about it, but at the same time it was, that one sentence of we're sorry for your loss. It didn't even mention her by name or, you know, how many years she devoted to the district, or it was nothing. We're sorry for your loss. And it said, we do not offer bereavement leave, but you can take any of your any vacation or personal time that you have left, which as a teacher, you get very, very little because we have summer break, spring break,
Right.
and I had used it all while she was in the hospital.
Mhm.
So I didn't have any, is the
Yeah.
point. And so I responded and I said, I don't have that. And she was like, well, you can take unpaid leave. And that was, the end of the emails. And I did not get paid for those 2 weeks of work. Um, Again, I recognized very quickly that I come from a place of privilege. My husband makes more than me. My husband really pays our bills, right? My money is for vacations and fun clothes. And, I'm
Yeah.
very blessed. And it was okay that I didn't get paid for 2 weeks. But I started thinking about people that couldn't afford to do that, right? About people who, like if I had just lost my spouse, how terrifying it would be to get an email that said, take the time, take what you need, but we're not going
Yeah.
to pay you. Well, I just
Right.
lost my spouse's salary, right? My husband just got in a car accident.
Yeah.
I've just lost the money he makes. I'm already terrified about my finances.
Yeah.
I better come back to work. I should come back to work because I need the money. I can't take 2 weeks unpaid. And so I realized that across our country, there are people returning to work who are still grieving. Because the other part, I'm going to use a big swear word here because it's genuinely what I thought, and I can be a forgetful person, but I will never forget this. Is thinking. I remember Googling and reading that in the US, the average, we have no federal mandate for bereavement leave, but the
Wow.
average that corporations offer is 2 to 3 days. And I remember reading that. I remember where I was sitting. I remember that there was a fire burning in the fireplace when I Googled it. And I remember thinking, what the fuck am I supposed to do with 3 days?
Right.
What am I doing with that? You're going to pay
Yeah.
me for 3 days. What am I doing with that?
Yeah.
She died on a Friday. I'm going to take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. Her funeral's a Wednesday. The day after her funeral, you want me standing in front of 26 third graders or fifth graders. I was teaching fifth grade then. You want me standing in front of them teaching? That's what you want? You
Yeah.
think that's what's best for the kids?
Yeah.
And I would love it if you also cared about me. Do you think that's what's best for
Right.
me?
Yeah.
And do you think I'm going to be productive at work? Do you think I'm going to be patient? Am I going to be tolerant? Do you think the day after my mother's funeral, I'm going to get up at 5:45, take my shower, get dressed, and come skipping into work with my
Right.
coffee, ready to be my best self? It's not even good for the organization. So if you don't care about me and you don't care about the students I work with, it doesn't even seem like you care about the organization because this isn't good for the organization for me to come back.
Right.
Now, fact of the matter is, it can be expensive to give people time off, and people can take advantage of that. And there's all the things that you and I can talk about, but people are going to have to return to work while they're still grieving. Had I been given a month off, I still would have been grieving when I returned to work, right? So people are still going to be grieving when they come back. And we need to build a workplace that allows for that. We need a workplace culture that allows for that. We need a workplace that allows for it. We need leaders who understand what grief looks like.
Yeah.
We need leaders who understand that 4 years later, on March 3rd, I might cry and that
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay. I might take the day off, right? I might want to be on my couch under a blanket crying. And we need leaders who understand what grief looks like and what people need and how to balance encouraging those people to re-enter the workplace with allowing them the grace and space they need to grieve. And so that was what my research was really focused on. I've had a wonderful opportunity to work with several organizations. Most of it, one of the things we're not yet doing is proactive work. Most of it is reactive. So
Mm,
people hire me because there has been a grief experience at their
okay.
organization, right? There was a theater about a year ago. I worked at a theater out here where one of their employees died. So it was, it was more of a mass project, right?
Yeah.
Many of our employees are struggling. How do we help them? I've worked with a school system where I'm currently actually working with a school out in Phoenix. They have a parent in their community who is dying, and so how do those teachers? How are they going to help the children? How do the parents help dad and the kids? Like, so how do the teachers, the school community? So there's a lot. There's another organization I'm working with where again one of their employees has not died yet but is going to. She has a terminal illness. So I'm also working with them. And so, there's still a lot of growth to be done because I think every organization is going to have employees who are grieving, who are coming to work, or you're going to have a grief experience within your organization. And I would love to get to a point where organizations recognize that importance and started proactively working on building a culture that allows for it instead of calling me after something has happened and they
Right.
need it, so
Yeah.
there's still growth to be done, but I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah. And there you go, coordinating again.
Yeah. Right.
There
Right.
you go, coordinating
Professional
again.
coordinator.
There you go.
I should add that to my business card. That's
Exactly.
something you're identifying that I haven't identified before, but I love it. I'm going to
There
take
you
it.
go.
Yeah,
Um, I would say I want to ask you what everything that you've experienced. Would you say that you love yourself more now after the loss of mom than you did prior to her?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do
I'm
you love
much,
about yourself more?
um, all the bits and pieces. Like I'm much more accepting of myself and forgiving of myself. And I also don't think I have time to waste. I don't have time to waste. I my grandmothers and my mom, both grandmothers and my mom have all died before they were 70 years old. And I hope that's not my story,
Yeah.
but if it is, I don't have time to waste on being mad at me, right? So I've got to like me. And I will tell you, not everyone likes me. And that's still always hard, right? When like you encounter someone who doesn't appreciate you or doesn't like you, like that's always going to be a hard thing. I shake it off a lot faster now. I still have my moments of like, how can you not like me?
Yeah,
Right? Like
I'm a great
I'm
person. I'm the
I'm
best person you'll ever
fantastic.
meet.
How do you not like me? Right? And so you
Yeah.
still have those moments of like shock and awe, which sounds so that lacks humility. But we never like that, right? Like even if I don't like another person, I'm like, I don't like you, but what do
Yeah.
you mean you don't like me? Like that's
Right.
not okay.
I know why I
Um,
don't like you.
right? Right?
Yeah.
And and I have come a long way in being so much more accepting of that and also like just focusing on the people who do like, right, there are people who do like me. I'm not for everyone, but I am for someone, and that's kind of cool, right? And so um I'm just, and again, I said it to you 20 minutes ago and I'll say it again. This is imperfect. Sometimes I have to remind myself, right? But I definitely am more accepting of myself today than I was. I think another big reason why is because for the most part, if you are generally a good person in your life, again, I think all of us have had our moments, me included for sure. But if you are generally a good person with a good heart who wants good things for other people, when you die, no one is beating you up over your faults, right? Over the things that aren't shiny.
Yeah.
No one is. No one. I have yet to be at a wake, a funeral, a memorial, a celebration of life where people in the corner are like, did you know she ate dessert every night? Like nobody does that, right?
Yeah.
So those things we beat ourselves up over, which I do eat dessert. every night. Though, and those things that we beat ourselves up over, that we even weight, right? I would love to be 30 pounds lighter than I am. I
Yeah.
would love that. I exercise. I eat as healthy as I can. I get rest. I do my thing. My body is what it is, right?
Right.
If I woke up tomorrow 30 pounds thinner, I mean, that would be shocking and scary that that happened
Mhm.
overnight, but I'd be happy. I'd be like, this is great. We're buying new clothes. At the same time, if I die tomorrow, it would be shocking to me if anyone at my funeral was like, she's always been a little bit overweight. Like,
Yeah.
people don't do that.
Yeah.
So we have to stop doing it to ourselves, because when we go, people are going to remember the good bits. They are. They're going to tell stories about the good bits, and we have to
Yeah.
focus on those too.
That reminds me of that aspect of don't sweat the small stuff, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, you have to remind yourself, like, this is not a perfect practice for me. There are absolutely afternoons when I am sad. Like, um, you order new clothes in the mail and they don't look on you the way they looked on the
Yeah.
lady online, right? You order them off J. Crew and they look different on the model than they did on you. And you have to remind yourself and be like, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. It's okay, right?
That's just
I'm
not my
good.
body type.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
sometimes you slip back into that, those moments. But I can usually bring myself back if I use a little positive self-talk. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's important.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot, and
I,
I
I
thank
have
you
taken up
so much
more of your
for.
time than you are allowed for. And I hope that that's okay. But I really have enjoyed talking to
No,
you.
you have not taken up. You've taken up the right allotted amount of time.
Good. Perfect.
Okay, so I know that one thing that I do want you to briefly touch on, because I think it's a huge aspect of that coordination,
Mhm.
that we bring in from grief. You have a calendar.
Yeah, I do.
Tell us just briefly about your calendar that you have.
Um, it's behind me and I wish I could show it to you, but it would be a lot of work and probably a little awkward. And it's not even exactly a calendar. It is a poster sized piece of paper. Like, if you remember, posters aren't much of a thing anymore. So if
Yeah.
you're too young to remember a poster, Google it. But it's a poster sized piece of paper, and it has tiny little squares across it and then up and down. It's a grid of tiny squares. And when you order it, it asks you to put in your birthday, right? Birth, month, day, year. And there is one square on this piece of paper for every week of your life, assuming you live to be 87 years old, right? And I guess if you live to be longer than 87, screw the poster. You don't need that anymore, right?
Right.
Like, good for you. You're still here, you're healthy, you're alive. But it goes up to 87 years old. Now, on mine, I have added a sticky note and a post-it note, I should say. And that post-it note, I put the minimum. I wrote the words "the minimum" on it, and I stuck it where 70 years is. I really want to at least be 70. I want to have a 70th birthday, that one that my mom didn't get, that her mom didn't get, that my
Yeah.
dad's mom didn't get. I want to be the woman who gets to celebrate being 70. If I live to 87, praise Jesus, right? As long as I'm healthy and, have my wits about me and pretty
Right.
normal, I'd love to be the crazy old grandma who's like dancing to Eminem, and, my
Right.
grandkids to be like, who is this old rapper you're listening to? And I'll be like, he was the greatest. Um, and that would be such a gift, but I have 70 marked on it. And so when you order it, it colors in. So it tells me I was born on a Thursday, which I verified because I was like, I don't know that I trust you. And it was right.
Right.
And so every Thursday I color in another square. And the point is, it gives you this overall visual, right, of your entire life. When you look at it, it's very easy to see right now I'm a midlifer, right? I'm about halfway through if I live to be 87. If I
Mhm.
only live to be 70, I'm a little more than halfway through. And so it's this great visual of time passing. And again, that reminder to not be wasteful with it. But it also, so my goal every Thursday when I color in a square is to think back on the previous week and to think back to, did I do something in this past week that was meaningful or impactful, right? Did I do something? And that is terribly important to me. And so far, knock on wood, since I have gotten it, I've always been able to say yes, right? And sometimes it's a little thing. Like I had dinner with a friend that I haven't seen in 2 years, but I really, really enjoy her company. Sometimes it's that I had a one on one date with one of my kids and had alone time with them, and I loved that. Sometimes it's, something bigger. Like I went away for the weekend with my husband, and we had a great time. But what I love about it is that it's not day by day, right? Because you're going to have some days that are just mundane. You're going to have some days that are about folding laundry and catching up on bills and going to work and going to soccer practice. And, like there are going to be days, and they have to be that way because we have to be responsible adults, right? I'm not going to be irresponsible thinking life is short. But
Right.
you want to make sure that within every week, there is something that happens that was intentional and that was positive and that adds up to my life story in a really good way,
Yeah.
right? That, is somehow just I don't know. I don't know. And I love it. My husband hates it. He hates it. He was like, it's because he is about the same age as me. And I think he finds it very stressful to like look at
Yeah.
those boxes all colored
Yeah.
in. So it's not for everyone, but it is super motivating for me. I see it every single day. It is in a place in my home where I see it every day. And it does help me remember to focus on the big things, to focus on the good things, to make a plan for next week, to make sure, do I have something planned for next week that is going to make coloring in that box feel good?
Right.
And so it does a lot to motivate me and to bring me joy. Other people, like my husband, it really, kind of gives them the shivers, but
Yeah.
I
Like, I
love
don't
it.
want to count my days.
Yeah, yeah. So it depends upon your personality type, but if it's motivating for you, I highly recommend it because I love it. It was a Pinterest find, and I love
Awesome.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything that we should look forward to seeing from you here in the near future? Any projects or goals that we'll see?
Um, Not specifically. I have my website, tomorrow morning. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I use Instagram a little bit more than I do Facebook. I do a lot of public speaking. My next public speaking opportunity is actually in Canada next month. In April. I'm counting it as being March now,
Right.
but I do some public speaking, and I like to educate as many people as I can. So, organizations that want to reach out and work with me, I want to work with them. Individuals who want to talk to me, I want to talk to them. I have my second article is being published March 1st in Get Griefy magazine. So I have those articles out there. I also have, I am one of 12 contributors to an anthology on grief that will be released, I believe, in May or June. So that is, I believe, Stories of Lives Lost is the title of that book that is not yet released, but will be. So I have some writing things out there. I have speaking opportunities. I have individuals and groups I'm working with. I absolutely love everything I do. And if there's anyone out there who's interested in learning more, talking to me, has an idea that they're like, maybe you'd be good for this, I just think that it never hurts to reach out and ask and see where that goes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, all of Kim's information will be up under in her bio of the podcast. So you'll be able to get in touch with her and just kind of keep track of everything that she's doing. Kim, I thank you so very much for coming into the shadow box and just having this time with us and being vulnerable and being
Yeah.
transparent and just telling your story. I think
Thank
everything that
you.
you do is beautiful. I think everything that you do is meaningful. And I am very blessed to be able to have this conversation with you and just shed some light on things that need to be brought
Thank
into
you.
awareness.
I've loved talking to you. You're a very easy person to talk to. And just that you let me share my story, and the interesting bits and the mundane bits, and um if people come to this podcast because they know me, I also want to make sure they know where to follow you. I think what you offer and you do is an incredible gift also. And it's so tied into what I do, but also so different from what I do. So, if you have found this because of me, I want you to make sure that you go and search out. Tell me the name of your website again.
A piece of mind
That's
dot
right.
org.
A peace of
Mhm.
mind. And it's great. Like also go to her website and check it out because she does some really, really cool stuff too. So the two of us could
Awesome.
change the world.
And it's
Yeah.
a piece, it's PEACE and mine, MINE. So it's
It's a
not,
fun play on words. It's like
it
tomorrow
is.
morning. You and I are both really fun like that. So I like that. Kindred spirits.